sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. As Simon and his companions hunted for him, when they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighbouring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also. For that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. Amen.
We're focusing on verse 35. And there we heard Raylene read, "In the morning, while it was still very dark, Jesus got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed." So put the question and seek some response. Why did Jesus head for the wilderness that morning to pray? What drew Jesus to prayer that morning in that place? The context might give you a little clue.
Have a go, I guess. Well, the day before, he'd been surrounded by people and the needs of people, and he had to go to his Father and just touch base with him. I think, well, more than touch base, but just set that. I don't know what you quite call it, but just go to the Father, because everything comes from the Father. Yeah.
Thanks, Alison.
He needed to be connected to the mains.
Go on.
Well, it's picking up the point that was just made, where the energy he brings and brought to the earth needs to be reinforced, reinvigorated and recharged with direct communion with God. And so that was the place where he could do that without any other demands on his time.
Thanks, Stu. We know that Jesus is God, but we see here another demonstration of his full humanity. We sang in the song before communion, human. Jesus was fully human and therefore needed to connect, plug into the mains.
I think if you're going to take on warfare with the demons, you're going to have to be fairly well covered by Christ, by God. I suspect that he'd already been working quite openly against the demons. They don't go home and sit down and lick their wounds. They come back and hit you again. And if we try to do that by ourselves, we're going to get in deep trouble. And I guess Jesus needed to go to the Father to do that too.
Thanks, Mary. Mary's also picked up the point that we were going with this. If Jesus needed to do this, then there's an obvious application for us. Also, out of what Mary said, we can see this wasn't a picnic. It wasn't a social event. It was social, but it wasn't a picnic. It was ministry. And with ministry comes challenge. Jesus could have even been overwhelmed by what was suddenly happening. Even tired. Jesus had been expending his heart of compassion through healing and restoring people to community. Because also of the complex challenges ahead, facing off against immense evil. When your intent is to share the gospel, you will likely encounter a whole lot more. For the gospel, with its call for repentance from all ungodly behaviour, touches the whole experience of life in community. Jesus went that morning into the wilderness to be undistracted, or at least to reduce distraction in seeking God, to gain some solitude where he would only hear God, and to be refreshed. We should note that Jesus, when disturbed by Simon Peter and the others, willingly responded immediately. This is crucial for our understanding of the connection between prayer and mission. To be hunted for, as we have it in verse 36, let's go back to the text, and spoken to with that level of insistence, everyone is searching for you, may have been very off-putting. What was up with these disciples, we might wonder. Maybe they disapproved of prayer as being too passive or detached, or they just didn't understand it, or were just so harried by the crowds and anxious about things. Yet Jesus, rather than castigating his disciples, went with them. Perhaps unknowingly the disciples were right on the money. This shows that Jesus' time of prayer was not escapist, not separatist, and certainly not self-serving, but rather energy fuel for the mission ahead. To connect with people with redemptive intent is what Jesus came to do. Jesus' prayer actually propelled him back into the mission for which he was sent, proclaiming the good news throughout the neighbourhoods and liberating people from all sorts of captivity. So we've started to talk about this. I want to delve more deeply into it. What was Jesus doing in prayer? What was he saying? What was he praying about? What was he praying for? Think about that and I'll seek some responses. This would have been much more than just a wish list. After all, even the Lord's Prayer keeps the wish list to a minimum. And even in referring to our daily bread, this was more an acknowledgement of God's faithfulness and our need of trust. The rest of the Lord's Prayer was primarily about our engagement with God's will, worshipping, serving, reforming, forgiving, and enduring. So when Jesus went to spend time with God that morning in the wilderness, what would have been happening? The first one we've already mentioned, and we'll start our list. This was about keeping in touch with God. This, for Jesus, would have been a deep investment in relationship. Jesus would have been seeking to recapture the community that had been divided through his incarnation to earth, seeking the sort of personal connection he had left behind. I wonder what other things might have been happening at that time of prayer. Any takers?
For me in that text there's a change of direction, and so yes, there's a refreshing of the need that came from the day before, but perhaps also a seeking of God's priority of where to go next. And and I guess seeking what God's will is. So to go then, he doesn't go back to the town, he goes to neighbouring towns. And even though it seems like there's still need there, there's people still looking for him, he has a clear vision of what it is that God is asking of him.
Yep, thanks, Ladine. And that one's on the list, and we can't really change the order, so we'll come back to it when we get down there. But that's great, thank you. There was a change of thinking, so the prayer didn't just talk about fait accomplis or set agendas. There was an engagement that led to a change of direction. We'll come back to that. Nan.
If Jesus needed to pray, how much more do we sinners save like us to be achieve this?
Did we all hear that? Just reinforcing, if Jesus needed to pray with this depth, how much more do we need to pray, given who we are and our challenges? So this is in our mind, and we're going to come back to that a little bit too, but this is in our mind as we go through these reasons why Jesus prayed, draws us into similar reasons why we should be praying and the sort of outcomes that might come out of that. Any other thoughts about what was being prayed that day?
Real communication is always a two-way process of speaking and listening. And nothing was, there would have been a speaking of Jesus to his Father, who would have been listening, as I think Elaine brought out.
So it was a two-way communication. Jesus speaking, God speaking back, Jesus hearing, perhaps feeding back, testing what he was hearing, so that certainly Jesus would go forward in God's will, which is sort of what we should be doing in prayer when we're trying to test things and make decisions, both individually and corporately. Thanks, John. Others? Was that a half hand, Jim? Claire's got a full hand.
I was just noticing after he had prayed when they came, he said, let us. I dare say he was praying for the disciples' courage too.
So there was particular human targets, if we like, in that prayer. He was praying for his disciples because they would be the one partnering with him in the mission that was about to happen. And they would need lots of prayer. I think Jesus, stronger, more ready, more prepared, the disciples, just newbies, and needing the complete coverage of God in what they were going to be asked to do. Other thoughts? If you were in Jesus' position, given what was happening prior and what was about to happen, what would you be praying? Help.
I might be wrong, but I think this is a total change of pace for what's happening in Jesus' life. This is the beginning of the road to the cross in terms of the work he's doing and the mass communion he is having with the people at large. And this would be a good time to have a conversation with God about the battle plan ahead, I would have thought.
Of course, in Mark's Gospel, we don't have any Advent Christmas narratives. So from chapter 1, verse 1, we're on the road to the cross. So indeed, this is all a progress towards what will ultimately bring salvation, but will ultimately bring Jesus to that point of sacrifice for humanity. William Barclay wrote, "Now Jesus knew well that he could not live without God, that if he was going to be forever giving out, he must be at least sometimes taking in, that if he was going to spend himself for others, he must ever and again summon spiritual reinforcements to his aid. Jesus saw it as we need to seek spiritual reinforcements, spiritual resources as we go forward. The human Jesus would understandably be engaging with divine God in terms of what humans need in the face of earthly challenges. Strength and assurance, especially with the obvious appearance of evil. Peace, especially given any anxiety in his disciples. Wisdom and direction, especially with the current broad interest in him and the wide geography involved. And next, Blodine took us down this track. We can actually deduce part of that conversation that Jesus had with God and God with Jesus, that following Jesus' time of prayer, he actually headed towards a different neighbouring town than Simon Peter was suggesting. For whatever reason, this was God's leading that Jesus discerned through prayer. So prayer brought a change of thinking, more in line with God's intentions. As Claire pointed out, Jesus would have been praying for his disciples, his co-workers, his team. At that time, Peter, Andrew, James and John, perhaps more, but they're the ones named so far in Mark's Gospel. They surely would need lots of prayer, having been plucked from obscurity and simple daily lives and given the biggest mission of all time. But if Jesus was praying for those who would be delivering the message, wouldn't he be also praying for those who were about to receive the message? Jesus would have been praying for all those he would soon encounter. Perhaps especially those most affected by evil, injustice or disease. Those with the most complex issues that Jesus would be confronted with. I'm sure, too, there would have been many words of thanksgiving in anticipation for God's preemptive activity in the lives of his disciples and in the lives of those who would be receiving the message. This, for Jesus, would have been a thorough absorption in kingdom mission, where absorption means a disappearance through incorporation into something else, like water absorbing into the skin. This is about completely submitting to God's reign. As water is absorbed into the skin, so is Jesus, so are his disciples, and so we can be absorbed into God's kingdom and God's mission completely. If that's going to happen, our prayers too should sound like Jesus' prayers. Seeking a deep investment in relationship with God. Not just a surface relationship, not just a part-time relationship, not just a convenient relationship from our side, but a thorough, deep investment in relationship with God. Seeking to receive everything that God has to give us, and thereby understanding all that he is calling us to and blessing us with. We should be seeking all the resources, all the spiritual resources that we need to engage in life, in community, and in witness to who Jesus is every day that we have. We have earthly challenges, and we need God to see us through those earthly challenges. We too need strength and assurance and peace and wisdom and direction. And we need to be light on our feet. We need to be able to adapt and change and move in a new direction quickly if that's where we're being called. Life is very quick and vital and things happen very quickly, and God may be saying, don't go there anymore, go over there instead. Don't concern yourself with that issue, concern yourself with this. That person's going to be okay. Someone else is looking after that person. You need to look after that person. We need to be in tune to be able to follow those leads and not get stuck. As Jesus prayed for his disciples, who then do we need to pray for? Each other. The other members of the team. We're all on the same team. Jesus is still the leader, and we're all on the team in different ways, in different roles sometimes, but equally gifted on the team. And we need to be praying for each other. And if we're praying for each other as the bringers of the message, who else do we pray for? Those who may receive the message. And this message, I'm not just talking about a verbal message, I'm talking about very practical messages of love and interest and concern and acceptance and hospitality and welcome that may lead to people meeting with God. Having said that, we don't want to have a salesperson, consumer type attitude to others. The story is told, and I forget who was saying it during the week, where I was reading it actually, but part of discipleship, part of becoming who we are to be in Jesus is not just in the giving, but it's also in the receiving. So the story is told of the person who went out to share Jesus with someone, and then in making that effort to share Jesus, it was actually the person who invested back in them who was a disciple to them. So this is often where God has prepared other people for us to meet with. This is a mutual engagement of blessing. Our prayers should be full of thanksgiving because God is working. And in praying as we do in this way, we are absorbed thoroughly into kingdom mission. We can't escape our call to share the gospel. Neither can we escape human interaction. Jesus needed to pray, so we need to pray, and probably a whole lot more. Man reminded us of that already. So we can't escape our need of prayer. In this prayer and reflection, we might gain the very insights and new perspectives and that deeper knowledge of God taken deep into our spirits that is so vital to our lives and to God's kingdom. Can we embrace this level of prayer where we are absorbed into God's kingdom mission and the sharing of the good news? Our elders and board recently entered into this space with some pretty good outcomes, I think, in terms of what we received from God. Could this be a year of prayer and thereby a year of remarkable discovery and effectiveness? We must ensure through prayer that whatever we do flows out of our relationship with God, not human desire. We must ensure through prayer that whatever we do flows out of a relationship with God, not human desire. We will be promoting some prayer themes and giving opportunities to do some prayer walking or gathering or dispersing for prayer in public places. In Jeremiah 33 verse 3, we read this: "Call to me and I will answer you and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." It's on the screen. the context of this verse is God bringing Jeremiah into the place of prayer, where he will hear things not before known, hidden things, things he can use to encourage the besieged people of Judah and Jerusalem. That ahead, despite the past, there will surely be times of healing, restoration and rebuilding. It is as we spend time in prayer, especially together, that we will come to know those hidden things, through which we will know how to best engage in God's mission and be the church God wants us to be. Amen. We'll sing and then we'll pray, then a couple of announcements, and then we'll have a cuppa together in fellowship and in community. Thanks, Adam.